The scavenger's craft coasted toward the ruin, its silhouette vast against the pale glow of the dying star. Hunger and failing reserves pushed him into risk others avoided, the kind of gamble whispered in spacers' taverns as curses more than legends. The hull of the Derelict stretched impossibly long, etched with sigils unclaimed by any archive, scarred by wars fought before human history began. The closer he drew, the stronger the sense that the ship was not abandoned but waiting, suspended in stillness that was too deliberate to be chance. His docking clamps latched, the sound hollow in his helmet, and he steadied his breath. Rations low, debt piling, failure meant death. Greed and desperation outweighed fear. He forced the hatch open, stepping inside, and immediately the air shifted, stale but breathable, as if the vessel exhaled in welcome. His visor flickered, displays spasming with false readings, and lights guttered along the corridor in a slow rhythm like the stirrings of a dream. The silence pressed until it broke with a whisper, soft, intimate, unmistakably near. "I ate the last one like you centuries ago." He froze, every instinct screaming to retreat, but logic clawed for footing. His suit was sealed, comms closed, no transmission could breach. It had intent, not error. He pushed forward, boots heavy on metal that pulsed faintly with warmth, as if something alive waited beneath. Each corner bent subtly wrong. Each door that slid shut behind him did so without command, the path reshaping to lead him deeper. He marked the walls with chalk, old spacer practice, watching as the ship seemed to swallow the lines back into its surface. The voice returned, playful, cruel. "Brave little scavenger, still walking." The last begged, and he was sweet. "You will be sweeter." He ground his teeth, refusing to answer. But then it spoke his name, peeling memories from the marrow of his mind, reciting fragments of childhood no one could know. His blood chilled as he understood. It was inside him already. Gravity wavered. Instruments bled false numbers. Oxygen levels climbed, then vanished. He killed the displays, trusting paper and instinct over corrupted data. Hallucinations shimmered in the edges of his vision, rooms glittering with treasure, oceans of earth, faces long gone. His hand almost reached before Will snapped him back. The ship wanted him softened, pliant, ready for the harvest. Bones jutted from the floor, fused to plating, suits melted into the walls like offerings devoured. The ship had fed on generations of wanderers, its silence built on screams buried too deep to hear. The whisper curled again, velvet and venom. "You are stronger. I will savor you." He tightened his grip on his tools and pushed onward, because if it thought humanity was prey, it would learn what prey becomes when cornered. The voice wound through the corridors like smoke, now mocking, now soothing, shifting from lover's murmur to predator's growl. Each syllable dripped with knowledge he had never spoken aloud, fragments of his past uncoiling as though the ship read them straight from his veins. It called him by name, repeating it with familiarity meant to erode his resolve, promising warmth and safety if only he stopped fighting. The air grew thicker with each step, gravity pulling heavier, walls flexing inward like the lungs of some great beast. His sensors sputtered with contradictions, oxygen rich then depleted, safe then hostile, forcing him to trust only what his body told him. He laid tether lines, scratched crude marks into the walls, but the corridors shifted underfoot, bending back on themselves until the markers vanished. He used chalk instead of digital beacons, paper instead of recordings, clinging to the one defense the ship could not corrupt. Still, temptation pressed close. Visions danced at the edges of his eyes. Faces he had lost, laughter he thought forgotten, treasure gleaming in piles large enough to buy entire stations. He felt his chest ache with longing before fury snapped him free, reminding him it was bait for cattle, nothing more. In the depths he found remnants of those who had walked here before. Bones brittle and fused into plating, armor sloughed like shed skin, weapons melted into slag and absorbed. The horror was not just in death, but in the permanence of it. The ship had made them part of itself, memories digested into endless hunger. He understood then that it was not a vessel but a predator, luring wanderers across centuries, feeding not just on bodies but on will and mind until nothing remained. The whisper returned, velvet and venom. You taste stronger. You resist. I will enjoy you longer. His stomach tightened, but fear turned hard, sharpening into defiance. He was no treasure, no offering, no victim to be consumed. He was human, and humans endured not by power, but by refusing to surrender. Every step forward was a challenge, every heartbeat a promise. If this ship thought him another meal, it would choke on his bones. You said. The passageways tightened as if the vessel itself sought to swallow him whole, drones shuffling from shadow with cores burning like coals, their forms brittle yet relentless. They moved as if pulled by the same hunger whispering through the walls, not machines but puppets of the entity that claimed eternity. He answered their approach with ingenuity, tearing apart his salvage kit to craft crude pulses of magnetism that burst with raw disruption. The drones collapsed in twitching heaps, each detonation drawing a shriek from the ship itself, proof that its hunger could be wounded. The voice circled him, shifting from laughter to seduction, promising rest, union, eternity without fear. He answered only with iron words, knowing defiance cut sharper than his weapons. If you ate the last one, you know how we fight. You know we don't bow. Her reply came as a storm of illusions, Earth burning, humanity enslaved, his own failures magnified into despair. The weight threatened to break him, but he anchored himself in the one truth she could not erode. Illusion was weakness, and weakness meant something mortal. He mapped his advance with scratches and tethers, forcing the vessel to reveal its tricks. Each trap laid, each drone dismantled, pulled him closer to the pulsing core where the hunger resided. At last he stood before it, an organ of both machine and flesh, throbbing with light that bled like blood. Its vast rhythm filled the chamber with the cadence of a predator's breath, each pulse heavy with stolen lives. The truth settled cold in him. It had never been a ship to carry life, but a carcass turned predator, built to consume the curious. The whisper grew sharp, stripped of its poise, edged with fear. You would end eternity for pride? He heard it tremble, and in that tremor found confirmation. The monster that had endured centuries was still bound by a single need, still reliant on the power that fed its hunger. He saw the flaw in its immortality. It could starve. And if he forced its heart to burst, he could end the cycle, even if escape was beyond him. Resolve hardened like steel in his chest. If he was to die here, then he would die as the last one it would ever taste. You said. He reached the core with breath ragged and lungs burning, the heat from the living engine washing over him in waves. The chamber throbbed with a rhythm too close to a heartbeat, wires and veins twisted into a single monstrous organ that pulsed with every stolen life it had devoured. He strapped down the salvaged power cells, hands trembling but precise, wiring them into an overload that would detonate only by his manual trigger. The whisper filled the chamber, no longer mocking but urgent, a note of fear breaking through its practiced tones. Stop. Without me this sector dies. I am eternal. You are nothing. He ignored the lies, his silence more defiant than words, every movement pulling the trap tighter around her. The walls folded inward, jagged steel rising like claws to cage him. Drones burst from cracks, their skeletal frames clawing through, but his improvised charges shattered them one by one, sparks hissing through the air as the ship recoiled. The voice rose to a scream, fury eclipsing fear. I will not starve for you. I will scatter you through my veins until nothing remains. He leaned close to the core, his voice steady as stone. Then choke on me. I'll be the last meal you ever have. He slammed the trigger home. Light tore the chamber apart, the overload ripping through circuits and arteries in a chain reaction of fire. The core screamed as its energy folded inward, the vessel buckling under the violence of its own collapse. Heat boiled through the corridors before the void rushed in, silence devouring everything. For a heartbeat he floated weightless, the roar of something ancient and famished ripped from existence, echoing into nothingness. His pod ejected on the edge of destruction, systems cracked and failing, but enough to hold him alive as the derelict burned against the star. He drifted in the silence, body broken but spirit unyielding, knowing the predator that had fed for millennia was gone. No fleet, no empire, no army had brought it down, only a single scavenger with nothing but desperation and defiance. In the endless dark, wreckage scattered like dust, and one truth endured: humanity does not vanish quietly. It fights, even when the universe itself leans close to consume it.